Have you ever felt completely alone in a sea of people? Like you're invisible, or worse, like you're speaking a language no one else understands. This is a story about that feeling and how a single, silent moment can change everything. It's a story about Maya Rahman and a boy named Ethan Parker. Maya had just arrived in New York City from Bangladesh with her mother. The city was a roaring beast of sounds and sights she couldn't yet decipher. Her English was limited to a few shy words, but she carried something far more universal, a kindness that didn't need translation. Her first day at a middle school in the Bronx was a culture shock. Hallways buzzed with a loud, confident energy she didn't possess. Kids moved in tight-knit groups, laughing and shouting in a rhythm she couldn't join. Lunchtime was the hardest. Maya would find a quiet corner in the chaotic cafeteria, her small tiffin box filled with the familiar comfort of rice and curry her mother had packed. It was a stark contrast to the pizza, burgers, and colorful sodas everyone else had. She was a tiny, quiet island in a loud, swirling ocean. No one spoke to her. No one even seemed to see her. But someone did see her. His name was Ethan Parker. Ethan was different. He was the kind of boy who noticed the little things, the way the light hit a dust mote in the classroom, the nervous twitch in a teacher's eye, or the lonely girl sitting in the corner of the cafeteria. He didn't just look. He observed. He saw the way Maya clutched her lunchbox, the way she kept her eyes down, building a small, invisible wall around herself. One Tuesday, the unthinkable happened. As Maya was getting up to put her tray away, a rushing student bumped into her. Her lunchbox clattered to the ground, its contents spilling across the dirty linoleum floor. The cafeteria, for a brief moment, went silent. And then a wave of laughter rippled through the room. Pointing fingers, whispers, and cruel giggles. Maya froze, her face burning with a shame so intense it felt hot to the touch. She wished the floor would just swallow her whole. But the laughter wasn't universal. Ethan didn't laugh. He saw the tears welling up in Maya's eyes, the way her small frame trembled, while everyone else pointed and stared. He stood up from his table. He walked over to where she stood paralyzed, and without a single word, he crouched down. He gently picked up the spilled rice with a napkin, put the empty containers back into her lunchbox, and carefully closed the lid. He stood up and handed it back to her. Then he did something else. He held out his own lunch, a simple sandwich and an apple. An offering. Maya looked up at him, her eyes wide with surprise. She didn't have the words to say thank you. She didn't know how to explain the gratitude flooding her heart. So she just smiled. It wasn't a simple smile. It was a smile that said, "Thank you for seeing me." It said, "I'm sorry for the mess." And it held a silent prayer for his unexpected compassion. Ethan didn't understand her language, and Maya didn't understand his world of fast food and loud conversations. But in that moment, in the middle of a noisy school cafeteria, they understood each other perfectly. They both understood what it felt like to be lonely. They understood that kindness didn't need a vocabulary. That evening, Ethan opened his worn notebook, the one where he jotted down his thoughts and observations. He wrote a line that would stick with him for the rest of his life. Some people talk with words, others talk with wounds. He had no idea, of course. He didn't know that this quiet girl, with the sad eyes and the powerful smile, would become the most important person in his future. He just knew that he had seen something special, a connection forged not in conversation, but in shared humanity. Their friendship didn't blossom overnight with grand gestures. It grew in the small spaces between classes. It started with a simple nod in the hallway. Ethan would save her a seat at the lunch table. He'd offer her a piece of his chocolate bar. She'd offer him a samosa her mother had made. They learned to communicate in their own unique way. He would draw pictures in his notebook to explain things, and she would point and use her small but growing vocabulary. He learned that her name was Maya. He learned that the patterns she doodled in her notebook were inspired by Alpana art from her home. She learned that he loved comic books and dreamed of being a writer. She learned that his quietness wasn't shyness, but a deep, observant nature. Their lunch table, once Maya's island of isolation, became their shared sanctuary. Other kids started to notice. The laughter had stopped, replaced by a grudging curiosity, and eventually, a quiet respect. Ethan's simple act of kindness had shifted the social dynamic ever so slightly. He became her interpreter, not just for language, but for culture. He explained the confusing rules of American holidays like Halloween. She, in turn, shared stories of festivals in Bangladesh, painting vivid pictures with her words and expressive hands. Through her, his world, which had felt small and predictable, exploded with color, flavor, and new perspectives. Through him, her world, which had felt intimidating and lonely, became a place of friendship and belonging. Years passed. Middle school melted into high school. Maya's English flourished, and her voice, once trapped in silence, became one of confidence and warmth. She joined the debate team, her arguments as passionate as her spirit. Ethan, encouraged by Maya's belief in him, became the editor of the school newspaper, his words painting stories that moved and inspired people. They were still Maya and Ethan, but they were also more. They were two halves of a whole, their bond forged in that one moment of spilled rice and silent understanding. Their friends could never quite pinpoint the exact nature of their relationship. They weren't just friends. There was a depth there, a current of unspoken understanding that ran deeper. They had seen each other at their most vulnerable. He had seen her shame, and she had seen his compassion. That kind of connection doesn't just fade away. One day, during their senior year, they were sitting on a park bench, watching the autumn leaves fall. Maya turned to Ethan and said, "Do you remember that first day in the cafeteria?" Ethan smiled, a nostalgic glint in his eye. "How could I forget? You looked so lost." "I was," she admitted. "I felt like I was on a different planet. When I dropped my lunch, I thought my life was over." She paused, then looked at him directly. "You didn't laugh, Ethan. Everyone else did. But you didn't." He shrugged, a little embarrassed. "It wasn't funny. You were hurting." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, wrapped box. "I never properly thanked you for that day. Words were not enough then, and they're not enough now. But I wanted to give you this." Ethan opened it. Inside was a beautiful, leather-bound notebook. On the first page, in Maya's elegant handwriting, was a single sentence: "For the boy who speaks with kindness." He looked up, his heart full. He pulled out his own worn-out notebook from high school, the one that had replaced his middle school one, and flipped to a dog-eared page. He showed it to her. It was the entry from all those years ago. Some people talk with words. Others talk with wounds. Maya read it, and her eyes welled up with tears, not of sadness this time, but of profound gratitude. In that moment, they both realized that their story wasn't just about a boy helping a girl. It was about how the quietest moments can be the loudest. It's about how the deepest connections are often made without a single word being spoken. It's a reminder that in a world that often feels divided and loud, a simple act of kindness can create a friendship, a future, and a love that lasts a lifetime. Sometimes, the most beautiful language in the world isn't English, or Bengali, or any other spoken tongue. It's the language of the heart, and it's a language that everyone, everywhere, has the ability to understand. Thank you so much for watching and sharing this story with me. If it touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories that explore the power of human connection. Until next time, remember to be kind. You never know whose world you might change. Weeks turned into a quiet rhythm of friendship for Ethan and Maya. He became her silent companion, a steady presence in a world of unfamiliar sounds. He didn't use complicated grammar books or endless vocabulary lists. Instead, he taught her English through pictures. A simple sketch of a sun with the word sun written underneath. A drawing of a smiling face, labeled happy. Each picture was a bridge. a small connection across the vast ocean of language that separated them. In return, Maya taught Ethan her world. She would write tiny notes in Bengali, the beautiful, looping script a mystery to him. But next to each word, she'd draw a little smiley face, a star, or a flower. It was her way of saying, "This is a good word, a happy word." He learned Bantu for friend and Dhanabad for thank you. Their communication was a patchwork quilt of drawings, gestures, and shared smiles, stitched together in the quiet corners of the school library and during recess. They didn't need many words to understand each other. They had built their own language, one born of patience and kindness. As winter draped the city in a thick blanket of white, a sense of excitement began to buzz through the school hallways. The annual cultural talent show was announced. Flyers with bright, cheerful designs promised an evening of entertainment, a celebration of the diverse talents within the school. Students started practicing their acts. The auditorium echoed with the sounds of pop songs, the rhythmic tapping of dance shoes, and the boisterous laughter from comedy skit rehearsals. It was the biggest event of the school year. Everyone had their predictions. Sarah from the 7th grade would probably sing that high note that always wowed the judges. Mark and his friends were working on a magic act that involved a disappearing rabbit, or so the rumor went. The usual suspects were all preparing to shine. No one, absolutely no one, expected what was coming. No one thought about the quiet new girl, Maya. She was still just a shadow in the background for most, the girl who never spoke. The night of the show arrived. The auditorium was packed, a sea of expectant faces shimmering under the warm stage lights. One by one, students took the stage. There was singing, some impressive, some a little off-key, but full of heart. There was a dynamic hip-hop dance routine that got everyone clapping along. A comedy duo told jokes that made the teachers groan and the students roar with laughter. The atmosphere was electric, a celebration of youthful energy and confidence. Then it was Maya's turn. The announcer called her name, and a ripple of confusion went through the audience. "Maya, who's that?" someone whispered as she walked onto the stage. The whispers grew louder. She carried nothing with her. No instrument, no props, no flashy costume. She was just wearing her simple school clothes. In her hand, she held a single blank sheet of white paper. She walked to the center of the stage, into the bright circle of the spotlight, and stood there. The whispers intensified. What's she doing? Is this the act? Just standing there. Few people chuckled, assuming it was some kind of mistake. The judges at their table exchanged puzzled glances and frowned, tapping their pens impatiently. In the front row, Ethan sat perfectly still, his hands clenched into fists. He held his breath, his heart pounding against his ribs. He knew how much courage it had taken for her to even sign up, let alone walk out there. Maya took a deep breath, the sound barely audible over the murmuring crowd. She raised the blank sheet of paper for everyone to see. A soft, gentle smile touched her lips, a smile that didn't quite reach her nervous eyes. And then she began to speak. Her voice was quiet but clear, each word carefully chosen, practiced for weeks in the quiet solitude of the library with Ethan. "This paper," she started, her English slow and simple, with the beautiful cadence of her native tongue. "This paper has no words." She paused, letting the silence hang in the air. "Like me, when I came here, no voice, no friends, no confidence." The auditorium grew quiet. The whispers died down. Every eye was on her, on this small girl holding a blank piece of paper. She continued, her voice gaining a little more strength. "But someone helped me write my first word." Her eyes scanned the audience, searching until they found him. They locked onto Ethan's. "My first word was hope." A collective sigh seemed to move through the audience. "He knows who he is." With that, she walked to the edge of the stage, right to where Ethan was sitting. She leaned down and gently placed the blank paper in his hands. It was a simple gesture, but it was filled with so much meaning. It was a thank you, a recognition, a symbol of their entire journey. For a moment, there was complete silence. The entire auditorium seemed to be holding its breath, processing what they had just witnessed, and then it happened. A single person in the back stood up and started clapping. Then another and another. Within seconds, the entire crowd was on its feet. The applause wasn't just polite. It was thunderous, a roar of admiration and support that washed over the stage. They weren't clapping because she had delivered a perfect, polished performance. They were clapping because she was real, because she was vulnerable, and because she was incredibly brave. She had shared a piece of her soul, and they had understood. Through the wave of applause, Ethan looked up at her, his eyes shining. He leaned in close and whispered, so only she could hear, "You don't need perfect English to say something beautiful." A tear rolled down Maya's cheek. This time, it was a tear of pure joy. That night was a turning point. From that day on, Maya and Ethan were no longer the silent duo in the corner. Maya's performance had broken the ice. Other students started saying hello to her in the hallways. They'd smile, ask her about her day, and include her in their games. They saw her not as the girl who can't speak English, but as Maya, the brave girl from the talent show. Her confidence blossomed. She started raising her hand in class, her voice still quiet, but no longer hesitant. Ethan was always there, encouraging her, helping her find the right words, and celebrating every small victory. Their friendship became a beacon in the school, a living, breathing example for everyone. They were proof that true friendship doesn't care about nationality or language or how similar you are. It doesn't need grand gestures or perfect words. All it really needs is a little bit of kindness and a willingness to see the person, not the differences. Their story became a quiet lesson, whispered in the hallways and shared in classrooms, a reminder that the most profound connections are often built without any words at all. Thank you for watching, and if this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing for more tales of connection and kindness.